we've been doing this for a long time. We've been, talking to people in this sector for a long time. Uh, and I mean, before that, we've all lived through. We're at Wired, and we lived through all the sort of technology hoopla periods, and the lesson of all of them, I think, is we're better served by a little bit of humility, right? Because there are people who say, well, this will cause no disruption, or this will create a lot of jobs, and there are people who say it'll cost jobs. Nobody knows, and there is no general rule, because some places it will and some places it won't. The same is true. There's a bunch of studies out right now saying, well, people who use AI a lot get stupider. I mean, okay, that's kind of ridiculous, but there are studies and articles and so forth saying that. But knowing what we don't know seems to be super helpful. I do think the applied business kind of questions are interesting, because basically people know there's this tool that can take a lot of data and process it very quickly, and that can produce new correlations in scientific research, or can do the work that other people were doing, and so forth. How do I apply it? And of course, in business, the punchline of that is always, how do I make more money?
Yeah.
In fact, we were talking to Gigi Levy-Weitz, right, the Israeli entrepreneur, tech investor. And it was interesting when I said, well, what are you looking for? And his response was, well, we're looking for 3-person unicorns. And I was like, well, what's a 3-person unicorn? He said, well, it's a company with just 3 people, but it's using AI to do the work of lots and lots of people. And so it's going to grow, but it's going to have a completely different kind of a model. And I guess as my last question here, I could come back and talk about a lot of things. Investors are looking at this differently. People who have to look 3, 4, 5 years out on this are looking at this differently. And I'm wondering what the vibe is you're getting from them.
I'm still getting boom vibes from investors on AI. On a lot of other things, there's a tremendous amount of concern right now. But the 3-person unicorn, I've also heard it expressed as the 1-person unicorn. Even who's going to be the first person who has $1 billion valuation for their business? It's just one person and AI. It's a good question. I investors that I talk to, and I try to both talk to investors regularly and also take what they tell me with a grain of salt, because they are fundamentally trying to promote their products, are still extremely optimistic that we're going to be able to, or that people writ large are going to be able to use all sorts of AI tools, specialized ones, build new tools to create enormous enormous amounts of wealth with very small teams. And that's I think you can take that a few steps farther and see that maybe that same type of thinking could be applied to existing businesses. And it's I think there are some concerns that we should have over that. David, I know we're running short on time here. Can I bring up one other thing that I thought was interesting that came out this week?
Absolutely.
My former editor, actually, at Wired, he was my first editor at Wired, a guy named Rob Capps, wrote a story for the Times this week, looking at 22 new jobs that are going to be created by AI, and some of it was sort of a head scratcher to me, but some of it was very practical. And in fact, I even sent it to our publisher. I was like, hey, look at these couple of roles that he describes. These seem like some interesting things. He also brought up an idea that's very popular right now in AI circles, which is the role of taste, and that you're going to have humans who steer the taste, and the human value of taste is something that's going to be really hard for AI to mimic. I do think of it as a mimic. And to me, that's an that was his story was an optimistic one when we talk about the potential downsides, Rob went out and found some upsides and some places to be thinking about the future in ways that aren't a little gloomy.
That's cool. What are the jobs you think you need to add at Tech Review that came up in it?
Essentially, one's around steering AI around our corpus of editorial in ways that can benefit readers on sort of an individual basis, on being able to develop AI internally on our training it and then making it something external facing.
It's interesting because Neiman Lab comes out. It does these summaries of various reports. There was a Reuters report on where people get their news these days, and a big element in the Reuters report this week was AI, and part of it was, it's disrupting models, right? As people, as you guys and others must find, as we find, the whole theory of how you promote content on the internet has changed because people used to go use a search engine. The search engine would lead them to a bunch of things. Now there's an AI at the top of the page that says, here's the answer to your question, and people aren't looking any further. And so it's causing potential problem. But there were also some suggestions in this Neiman Lab study that some publications were using AI to write their headlines. And I'm just bringing that up to you. Here's an opportunity.
I mean, I'll tell you that I'm already sort of doing that. I mean, I've always found, my previous role before Tech Review, I was working at BuzzFeed News. We had a tool in our CMS for every story we would write 3 headlines, and it would show variations of those headlines to 1,000 people. Whichever one won became the canonical headline. Whichever one got the most clicks became the canonical headline. And it sharpened the way that I thought about headlines, but it never stopped being tedious. And I still find like headline writing to be one of those things that's it's like a dark art. And the only way that I know how to do it is to come up with a bunch of them and then try and see, okay, well, this one wins. But coming up with a bunch of them, it can take you a long time. And so what I routinely do now is describe the story and or drop some of the text into ChatGPT and ask it to give me a list of 20 headlines. And, I don't always use one of the 20. I often typically don't even use one of the 20 word for word, but it's a great way to think, create, or to boost my creativity, I find. And, I use it all the time as a productivity hack.
I write a lot for other publications, and I've talked to those publications recently. And of course, in my line of work, like writing for, the New Republic, I just a piece for Daily Beast and so forth. And I talk to those editors, and they say, "Oh, headline writing is simple these days. You have to put the word Trump in every headline."
Right.
If
Yeah, that works too.
Yeah, that drives the story.